Welcome to Family Gamer TV. Now, I want to talk about the PlayStation Vita and how our family has found ways of using it that I hadn't expected, and it's really become part of our family life. Now, any technology to work with kids, it needs to be quite robust, but also it needs to have a bit of flex to it so that they can use it in the way they want. Now, I love seeing my children's DSs plastered with stickers, pretty trashed, to be honest, maybe using a pen rather than a stylus, but I think that is a sign that they really appreciate that tech and it's become part of their lives. Now this weekend we had a similar experience, but not with the DS, with the PlayStation Vita. Now you may be able to notice up here, attached to a DualShock 4 controller. You may be asking, well, why is it like that? Because obviously you can't use the DualShock to control the PlayStation Vita. But this is something my kids have been playing with and trying to work out some ways to innovate and to sort of make it their own. So what I've been doing is using the Vita to play games like Tomb Raider, maybe more grown up than I would want my kids to play. It means that not only can I free up the main screen by using the Vita to connect via remote play to the PlayStation 4, but it also means that I can go on playing those games during the weekend when they're around. I can keep an eye on what they're playing, but also keep my game to myself and just play it on my screen. Now over the weekend, my kids and my son in particular had noticed what I was doing. But Dad, why don't you use a DualShock 4 controller? Wouldn't that be better? And I was explaining to him, well, I'm not sure you can do that because as soon as you log in your Vita, it logs out the PlayStation 4 DualShock controller and you can't control both at the same time. But I went away, he got me thinking, I went away and I had a look and I figured out how to do this. Now there's a real trick. So what you need, obviously, is your PlayStation 4. Now you need two DualShock 4 controllers and you also need your PlayStation Vita. The key thing is having one of the DualShock 4 controllers logged in as another user, not your default user that's attached to your PlayStation Network account. Because when you log in with the Vita, it knows which is the default account because it's also set up on PlayStation Network, and it will knock out whichever of those accounts is on the PlayStation 4 and is currently logged in. So that means that controller, the DualShock controller, will be disconnected when you connect your Vita via remote play. But that second controller, that second DualShock controller, will stay connected. And if you log in as a different user, so we set up one here, it means that you can then switch to that user's screen. Now that's important. So you press the PlayStation button on the middle of that DualShock 4 controller as player 2, and it switches to their screen. But what happens is on the Vita, you can still see what they're doing because that remote play feature is still active. You can then start the game on the DualShock 4 controller as you would normally, and then you can see it being played on the Vita. So you have this scenario where you're using the DualShock 4 controller, as you can see here, but you're playing the game on the Vita, and you get all that back and forth that normally happens with the PlayStation 4, but you don't need the screen. So it means that that controller light that we've talked about in the past, you get that, all those light effects happening, but at the same time you've got that Vita screen so you can play it up close, you can play it anywhere in the house, and in fact you could play it anywhere in the world as long as you've got a nice meaty internet connection. Now I think this is a really nice way to extend that experience of a remote play. Not only do you get the extra little speaker effects of stuff that's happening close to you, but you also get the rumble. And just playing it like that made it feel much more like that console experience. But we wanted to take it a step further, or my son in particular did, and was saying, well, how could we attach? Surely there's a way to attach the Vita to the DualShock controller, because then you could just hold the two and you could walk around the house or be wherever you are, and it would be like a sort of a mobile gaming unit. In the morning I came down and discovered that my daughter had actually been trying this for herself and had used a whole bunch of rubber bands to connect and to tie the Vita to the DualShock 4 controller. And that worked because at the bottom of the Vita, it's got these nice little connection points that you can thread an elastic band through.
This is the Vita, but I'm using the PlayStation 4 controls.
And it's attached with these elastic bands? Is that working?
Yeah. Tiny bit wobbly.
That's cool. That's a great idea. And as you can see, it worked pretty well. You know, the attachment wasn't that strong. There's a little bit of flex in it, but she could use the Vita connected to the DualShock 4 controller and play a game. She was playing Lego Marvel there without any fuss, and it just connected the two units together, and again created this fresh experience. Seeing her doing that, we spent the rest of the day hunting the house. We popped into town trying to find things in shops that maybe would be a good way to connect those two together, maybe better than elastic bands, and we came up with this. You can get them in most stores will sell them, and it's the right width. You can see at the back there, it's the right width to go through, and it just ties round, and then one side of the Velcro attaches to the other. So as you can see, this is where we're looking at our finished product here of our weekend's work, and quite easily I'm holding this. You know, they're not too wobbly. It's acting as if it was one unit. So you can see there in the corners we're threading through the Velcro strip, and that goes round to the back. Now you need two, one on each side. Get that in shot. One on each side to hold the Vita in place. But then what you need to do, now though, if you just leave those, they'll be coming down over the buttons and over the D-pad. So to avoid that, what we've got is another one on the back. So you can see that this one is threaded through the back and pulls those two Velcro tabs to the side, so that you can then play it without worrying about them being in the way. Now it works very well. You know, there's a little bit of movement. I think you'd want a little bit of movement, but the key thing is that you need to have access to the charging point, and here you can do that. It just will fold down, and so you can access the back there for charging. You can take them on and off because it's just Velcro. You're not damaging either unit, so it's giving you a nice solution, a nice hack for that PlayStation Vita DualShock experience, as you can see there. Now there's one or two drawbacks still. That you're masking the headphone port there on the Vita is masked when it is attached, because obviously you can't get the headphone jack in. Because there's a headphone jack on the DualShock controller, I hadn't realised that you could configure that. So what you do is pop into the PlayStation 4 menu, and you can bring up your DualShock that's currently logged in, and you can go to the sound. You can select whether that headphone jack is just for player communication and voice, or whether it's all sounds. If you switch it to all sounds, then you're going to get everything streamed through this little jack here. We're still not 100% happy with it. There is one issue which I'd love for Sony to change on a firmware update, is that the dim option on the screen you can't turn off. Now you can turn off the automatic sleep. You can change that to sort of 10 minutes so that it won't go to sleep because you're not actually pressing any of the buttons. And I think because you're using the unit, don't think it will go to sleep. But what it will do is do an auto dim. After about 60 to 90 seconds, the screen will dim slightly. Now, and you can just tap any button or any part of the screen, and then it will light up again, and that may potentially a workaround, but it's not ideal. Also, if you're setting it up for this, you really need to adjust your brightness. So when you're playing the game on the Vita, you'll notice that both the colour balance and the brightness is different to how you need it on the TV. So do go into the brightness settings, as I did on Tomb Raider, to set that up. I put it much brighter, and again, I could see things much easier on the Vita. So there you go, that's the Vita, well and truly inaugurated, welcomed into our family. And I think just seeing it covered in elastic bands, being pushed maybe beyond what it was originally intended for, is certainly a sign that my kids have developed quite an affection for that way of playing. So if you liked our PlayStation Vita DualShock 4 hack, do subscribe to Family Gamer TV. We'll have more videos like this coming up. I'll also do an in-depth video about how you set it up online, and also I'll do another video of how you actually set up these Velcro bands to make them work in the best way. Having sort of fiddled with that for the best part of a day, we've got a good idea of how best to connect those two together. That's all we've got time for today. We'll be back with more soon.